is legitimate when opposition exists. Panel, with this. When cross carpeting happens, first of all, it's going to weaken opposition powers. Panel, how does it do this? Democracy begins slowly to die, right? A cycle of frequent politicians moving in and out of parties, right? At one time where democracy relies on opposition members to keep the ruling government in check by saying that, oh, as you are doing this, we don't want this. This keeps the ruling government in check. At one time where you know that elections are coming and this ruling government is still going to win, these opposition leaders will begin to move to the ruling party. This greatly weakens the opposition leaders that are inside this level of government, right? At one time where this ruling government begins to move over 4 years, over 8 years, and next time that continue. But now this says that the country begins to move into a more authoritarian state, and democracy loses its legitimacy. Good. Second problem that becomes is that it becomes more authoritarian on that regard. Good. But now let's move on to my cases, right? My first case is going to be that cross-carpeting intensifies political corruption. And I'll note that in my frame, I mentioned how these individuals are sworn into the parties to be dedicated, to be loyal representatives of the party, and to always be present. But I'll note that the problem then becomes that, one, if for any positive utility, no matter what it may be, you decide to leave the party and abandon your moral obligations, in no world can you as a political leader or individual be trusted. Why? You can't continually keep changing when you feel like it or it's a moral obligation on that regard, right? And you can easily be bought in that regard, right? It makes democracy and the political system in their world becomes transactional. As you tell you that, which you consider, oh, you only bring utility to our party. When you only bring utility to our party, that's why you're going to take you in that regard, right? The second problem then becomes that it becomes unfair to the opposing party in that regard. As first of all, the party slowly lose voters, right? People vote for you for a reason, right? And now at the point in time where you represent the party and you lose that voters in that regard. Secondly, the party becomes a hoax, even if it had good intentions. This feels to show in our message how it destroys democracy in that regard. The impacts are in two major ways. First of all, when we welcome this, any losing party can see it as a normal thing and just cross carpet without considering the consequences to the party and the state as a whole. Secondly, winning parties that cross carpet can escape their responsibilities and partly become less accountable to the citizens in that regard. But now, look at on this right. Okay, Material is going to listen on these cases. Thank you very much.
Let's welcome the practice.
Okay, first of all, I'll give a shout out to my parents for all the job promises. Then a shout out to Matthew and Jesse and all our other trainers from KDS. And a shout out to my dear partner who we have been through this so many rounds together. And a shout out to the entire EDC team and the entire KDS Debate Society. Thank you. I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Our first start with OOC. First of all, when we talk about parties, like people being qualified before they get into a party and run for a position, right? We tell you that before you can run for a position in the party, like for example, if you just switch into a party, before you are actually chosen to run for the position, you pick up a form, you are voted for, and the reason why there will only be qualified people who are voted for in that regard is that the party can decide whether or not to accept you when you want to switch. That is if you decide to switch and be like, oh, I'm supporting your party. And then you now have to go and register to be a candidate for a specific parliamentary position. And that is why the only reason that you actually get to be a candidate for a parliamentary position is if you are actually qualified in that regard. And that is why we show you that, that is why we tell you that the parties will only bring in qualified people to run as candidates when they switch. It's not a random person who will switch and suddenly become the member of parliament for this party whatsoever. Also, we show you that the people who are actually affected by this debate is those who are not exactly loyalists. That means that those who are they are free to choose which party they want to join, right? But then, however, the people who are loyalists to a particular party would not want to leave that particular party in any case. So in the case you brought about the president leaving that country, leaving that party, right? The party has already done so much for him, so he's most likely a loyalist to that party. So there is less incentive for him to actually leave the party in that regard. Also, he talks about ethnic groups, and that if you move, if you are if you are a candidate and you move into another country, all your ethnic people are following you. Here's one example in Ghana, right? We have two brothers in Parliament. I've forgotten their names, but there's one in NDC, one in NPP. What are in high level positions? So which ethnic group has followed them and split into two in NDC and NPP? Right, so we said they are based on your entire ethnic and whatever. You follow this one candidate into another party. It's not of much relevance to this debate, because even if they follow you to that party, it's even good for the party at the end of the day. Also, they come to say that there is a lack of accountability. However, we show you that when you move into a new party, the new party will check you. They'll check you and they'll make sure that like, you are actually good enough for their party. The lack of accountability does not stand. Also, it weakens, they say it weakens opposition parties. But here's the thing, the opposition parties are already losing. If you are weakening them more, then they will have to do more and start winning elections. We will join parties that are actually winning and parties that are actually doing good for the democracy in our countries. Now, what we tell you, right? What we as OG tell you, one, tell you that it eliminates the idea of loyalty to the politician. That is, they are free to leave the party wherever they wish. So those who grew up and had to be members of a party just because they are families members of a party. For example, majority of Ashantis are NPP and that regard. So those who grew up and had to be NPP by virtue of their family being NPP, but however want to change at any point in time in their political career can easily change. Unlike their world where if you change your mind and actually want to change, you cannot change because it is not normalized for you to leave the party that you have belonged to since birth. In our world, it's normalized to leave that country, and it is easier for you to leave that country. And so we support the agency and freedom of choice of these politicians who would want to leave. However, those who would not want to leave at all are not affected in this debate. Any POI? You're asking why the opposition parties will still exist, right? These opposition parties will still exist because there are still loyalists who will be following this political party. And also, these loyalists will also, there will always be loyalists because we have shown you that in West, because it's a fact that in West African democracies, most of us, there are a lot of loyalists in that regard, and those loyalists will not believe in the parties that they have stuck to since birth because they do not want to live in the